Hey YouTube, in this video I'm going to be doing a kind of like what it's like using the HD 7970 in 2022. I know the graphics card market is finally kind of getting back to normal, but I was curious, or well, not just curious, but I want to do a video to kind of cover like what it's like for those who kind of waited it out. You know, they didn't upgrade their PC from maybe, you know, like a decade or so. Because this is the HD 7970. This is the Tahiti, the granddaddy original of GCN 1.0, and all its glory. Triple slot, ASUS Matrix platform, 4 display ports, 2 DVI. There it is, ASUS Matrix HD 7970. So this was probably dual 8-pin way back in 2012. You got a 100% fan override. So pretty interesting stuff you have on here. You actually have some, you can manually adjust the voltage here. They don't really do that on any of the newer cards now that I can think of. But anyway, so we're going to be putting this through its paces in some modern titles, mostly single player titles, although we are going to test some MMOs to see how well this card can cope with kind of popular titles like Final Fantasy XIV, for instance. But I know this card is extremely rare. This is the only HD 7970 that I ever had. It did have issues with the memory. Some of the memory chips were not covered. As you can see in there, I had to mod it. I had to put heat sinks on the 4 memory chips that were uncovered. And I have a video on how to do that. I actually did that in a video that's still on my YouTube channel from way back. I think I did it in 2013. But anyway, that's the Matrix Platinum. We're going to be putting it in this test rig. The test rig, as you can see up here, is a Ryzen-based system. This is running a 3800X in an X370 Crosshair 6 Hero. I'm going to be swapping out this Radeon RX 6800 XT. We got a 1000 watt Seasonic Prime Titanium in there. That power supply doesn't like transient spikes from very high wattage GPUs. Vega 64 gives it an issue where it'll shut off sometimes. Same thing with 3090 Ti and maybe the 6950 XT. But anyway, let's get into those benchmarks. Let's take a look at this. We're going to do this live so people can see, not just looking at bar charts or pie charts or bar graphs. We're going to be showing you in real time, recording like what it actually looks like, what the gaming experience is like on this thing. We're going to be using a old 1080p 60 hertz ASUS monitor. This is a 22-inch monitor, because I'm trying to showcase like where this card kind of fits in the current market. Like it's end of support. You can't get new drivers for this card anymore unless there's like some security vulnerability that they require new drivers. But anyway, this card is considered a legacy card. Anything up to Fury is legacy at this point. So GCN is basically legacy, with the one exception being Polaris. But anyway, and Vega. But anyway, let's get right into that segment here. Okay, so we've got the card installed now. You can see it lights up there with an RGB LED. Now that is not user programmable as far as I know. It changes color depending on the temperature and the load on the GPU. So if it's lightly loaded, it's going to be a turquoise blue like this. If it's more heavily loaded, it'll turn purple. I think purple, then dark blue, or dark blue, then purple, and then red. And I think it also has like a green, like eco mode. But I forget exactly how you activate that mode. But anyway, that's basically it for the hardware itself. So you can see up there, 50, so we're not quite at 60. Let me just run around. It's almost 60 though. 40, oh there it goes, it drops. There's more effects. So 42, 43. I'm just kind of flying in the air. For those wondering what's going on the screen. So we're just kind of flying. And this is a pretty popular game. I know it's not nearly as popular as it was when it first came out. So I can have the blacksmith forge some stuff. Let's forge some of these. But you can see, like, here, just kind of zoom out so people can see what's happening on the screen. Just kind of switch characters and run around a bit, because that character doesn't like to show on the screen. So there's like a dog. So you can see, I mean, this is playable. This game doesn't really demand too much FPS. It maxes out at 60 anyway. But yeah, I would say this is definitely playable. This is comparable to the PlayStation 4 Pro, although it's actually better because the PS4 Pro caps you at 30 frames per second. So the PS5 is definitely better than this. It's like solid 60 and it's super fast at loading. But this is not bad. You can tell, like, the Matrix Platinum, the 7970 for how old it is, like it's a 10-year-old graphics card, and it's doing pretty good. Here, let's just kind of teleport to an area where we can fight something. All right, let's just fight these samurai dudes. So you can see 58, a lot of spell effects. Doesn't really seem like it's doing okay. 50, 40 something. Yeah, this is totally playable. Okay. I actually was curious to know how this game would run on such an old graphics card. There's a lot of color. There's a lot of, like, color going on the screen. There's still one guy that somehow managed to live because he was behind the thing. Alright. There. Okay, so that's Genshin Impact. I would say it's definitely playable on the Matrix Platinum. Okay, Final Fantasy XIV. We just kind of run around here. So this is a game that I actually started Final Fantasy XIV to A Realm Reborn back in 2013, and this 7970 was the graphics card that I was running the game on. As you can see, that's interesting. So it looks like the game engine knows that this is a HD. Notice how it says R9 200 and then /HD 7900 series. That's because this GPU was rebranded as the R9 280X. So they actually, yeah, that's interesting that the game is able to recognize both iterations of this card. Well, anyway, I'll leave the FPS here. Let me zoom out a little bit more. But anyway, let's just kind of run around and look up at the sky, see what the maximum FPS is. So, oh yeah, it's capped. Hold on. So, typically for MMOs, I leave them capped because there's no reason to burn up the GPU the whole time. Alright, so here we go. I've uncapped the frame rate. And you can see that even with the frame rate removed, if I look up at the sky, there's like nothing happening. It jumps up to 83. But then when I look down at the ocean, it drops to like, oh, it's almost 60. It's almost 60. I'm probably going to teleport. Let's just leave the city, actually. Here, let's go out of the city. Wow, that like jumps way up. All right, anyway, here we are. Now we're out in the world. Now we're out in the field. So we're not in the city, so we're typically not going to be CPU bottlenecked here. And you can see at max settings, 1080p, everything is on maximum settings. The game looks really nice for how old it is. The game will be 10 years old next year. Counting from A Realm Reborn, of course. Not counting it from 1.0. But if you look at it from that point of view, the game has aged pretty well. But you can see, like, the graphics card has also kind of kept up. Now, this is a DX11 client. When the game was new, it was a DX9 client, and it recommended the 7950. So 7970 is capable of playing the game at 1080p max settings, no problem. So anyway, that's what I'm going to call it. It's playable. It's good. So if you're playing Final Fantasy XIV at 1080p and you have a 7970, you don't really need to upgrade. Alright, let's move on. Okay, next we're looking at Atelier Sophie 2. So this is a single-player RPG, so this one shouldn't really... This should completely eliminate any kind of CPU dependency or potential CPU bottleneck, because this is a single-player game. It's a new game that came out this year. I think it's just DX11 based. I'm not exactly sure. So the game I would say technically, in my mind, since this is a single player RPG, it doesn't require any kind of lightning fast reflexes or anything. So this is actually playable. Like, this is tolerable. I'd be able to handle this and not be annoyed the whole time. I would get used to it. It's kind of like, it makes me feel like playing Dark Souls 3 on the PS4 Pro with the uncapped frame rate where it runs above 30, but it can never really consistently hit 60. That's what this feels like. Notice we're at a consistent like 40 FPS in this game at 1080p at max settings. So like, if we just mess with the graphics settings real quick, like, is there anything I can do to make it more playable? Like overall quality, let's make it standard. And see what happens. Okay, well that just fixed it. Basically dropping the settings to standard makes it run at 60 frames per second. You can see in the top left, we're now averaging 60 across the board. Now the character model looks sharper, so I don't know. Anyway, that's it's playable, but on high. But if you want it to be like 60, you gotta drop it to standard. So I'd give this one a pass. This is a game that came out in 2022, and the card is 10 years old, so it's not too terrible of an expectation to see it perform this mediocrely on this game. All right, let's move on. All right, for this next game, we're going to be showing Nioh 2. So you can see it's holding 60. I forgot the controls though, because I've been playing so much Elden Ring. He's gonna drop that guy. There we go. Alright, this game is very addicting. It's basically, it's like Diablo 3 on steroids. It's the easiest way to describe it for anyone who has no idea what this game's about. It's a loot fest with Dark Souls and Ninja Gaiden style difficulty. So anyway, that's Nioh 2. To me, it feels totally playable. In that combat situation just now, like, it didn't seem like it was affecting my ability to handle that situation. So, I'm going to give this one a pass. On the grounds that you run it at 1080p and don't go beyond 1080p. But again, like I said earlier, everything in this video is all going to be 1080p only. So if you have a 7970, I mean, it might be worth upgrading though. At this point, it's starting to look like an upgrade might be worth it, just because I'm surprised at the number of titles that I'm not able to run at 60 frames per second at max settings. Alright, next one. Alright, Monster Hunter World. So I haven't played this game in a while, but this is another game that's pretty graphics intensive. Okay, now we'll get some actual numbers here. So 39, let me zoom in a little bit so it's easier for people to see. Oh man, 38. Let's get into a combat situation. Actually, yeah, let's just get into a combat situation. Let's just fight something. I forgot how to play this game. It's muscle memory. But you can see 30, 40, it drops into the 30s. So it's almost like playing it on a console. Which is quite interesting, actually. So it's like what once was the top tier GPU in 2012 is now like a PS4. That's what it feels like. That's what it seems like most of these games seem to run like. It's like running them on a console. So 10 years later, the high-end graphics card or a top-tier graphics card has become a console. All right, let's move on to the next game. All right. Now we're down to 50, 60 something FPS. So out in the world, we're doing sub 60. So this is more expected. So you can see even these like anime type games, these cell shaded, where the games don't look that graphics intensive. On a modern card, you wouldn't have any problem at all. But you can see how here, the 7970. The frame rate is very all over the place. Like, see, it's 60 here, but then when there's a lot of forests and greenery, it drops to like 50 something, and then we go back and look at the ocean, then it goes back up again. So it's kind of inconsistent frame rate. It's just kind of all over the place. Indoors, you're like well over 100, but then you go outdoors and it like dips all the way down. Trying to see like in the game world, for instance, so see like out here by the ocean, we're doing close to 60, but then when we move around over here, we're like more like at 50, on the lower side of 50. But the good thing is it doesn't really drop below 50 from what I've seen. So it's still very playable. Let's go into combat situation. I forgot how to... Okay, there we go. So in combat we're doing like, again, it goes up to like, it goes from like 40 something to 60. It's like, that's kind of the range. And that seems to me like that's kind of the average that I'm seeing this card do. Like it's anywhere from like low 40s to upper 50s. That seems to be kind of the theme that I'm seeing, the overarching theme. So let's move on. Okay, this last game we're going to be looking at is IX Monstrum Nox. So this game is very, very good. The IX series in general is extremely good. But let's take a look. So just to show you guys, what are the graphics settings we're running at? So borderless window, 1080p, turn VSync on. Oh wait, I gotta have VSync on to show the FPS counter. That's really weird. It doesn't really matter because it's gonna... Wait. That's weird. As soon as I turn VSync off, I lose fraps. So... Anyway, wait, that's gonna mess up my... Well, hold on, what does this do? I don't think that's really needed, so... Yeah, everything is basically max except shadow. I'll just keep this PCSS. Okay, well, we're stuck at 60 because of VSync. Otherwise, I can't see the fraps counter, but that tells me that this game is totally playable. Well, so you can see it dipping a lot. So there goes, it dips down to 40. That's because it's not doing object culling, and that water is what's killing the FPS there. So yeah, that's gonna be the last game that we're gonna showcase. Now I'm gonna go into the conclusion. All right, so what are my thoughts on the 7970 in 2022? I think, honestly speaking, it aged pretty well if you're playing at 1080p. Now, having said that, at 1080p, the main reason why you would want to upgrade from this graphics card is probably the fact that it's not actually supported anymore officially. It is what's called a legacy part now. So it's also not really well geared for DirectX 12. So in terms of future game support, it's going to be very, very limited, and it probably won't really work on most newer games moving forward. I tried to test it with Elden Ring. Elden Ring didn't work. I got the white screen of death because it's a DX12 native game, and this graphics card does support DX12, but it's only feature level 11. So if the game uses features that are outside of, like, for example, like 12.1 or 12.2 even, then it just won't render correctly and it just won't work. So there are workarounds. There's GitHub DLLs to get it working, but you know, that's just going to be a headache, and it's very hit or miss. If the game gets patched, then it could break that and you have to start all over again. So, you know, not really good. I'm going to have to give this one a definite, you want to upgrade as soon as possible. Unless you can manage to wait until the end of the year when the newer cards come out. But then again, it's going to be kind of a gamble on what you can get, because right now things are normal and GPUs are in easy supply right now at MSRP. As long as you're going with AMD, you can get cards at MSRP or even in some cases below MSRP. I think that's going to probably be it's going to hold for a while. I don't know when the next mining craze is going to happen. I think we're kind of in a safe zone for now. But I don't know. And if you're looking at NVIDIA cards, you know, those are still overpriced. So I can't really recommend any of those right now. The one exception, the only card that's really at MSRP is the 3090 Ti. And that's definitely not recommended. It's $2,000. And it's going to be, you know, irrelevant once the 40 series comes out. So can't really recommend that either. So, you know, and anybody who's on this right now, I would say, if you haven't upgraded and you're still on a 7970, you got a lot of mileage out of it, and the card's still really good. For 1080p, as long as you are still on a 1080p monitor, you're probably okay, to be honest. I mean, the only thing to look out for are those DX12 games that you wouldn't be able to run without a bunch of workarounds. So the card performs well for its age. You know, I got a lot of use out of it over the years. I would say that it's still a nice card to look at, go down memory lane and kind of, you know, play around with it to see what it was like back in the day. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for the 7970. The next card that I'm going to be covering on this channel is going to be Power Color's PCS Plus Radeon R9 290X. So we're going to see how well this card aged by comparison in the next video. So if you guys want to see that, stay tuned, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.